Gaslighting, an often abused phrase that herein refers to the act or behaviour of, via a process of malicious intent, causing another to doubt their own sanity or question their own state of mind. If you've had the pleasure, or displeasure as it actually is, of having a conversation with a person of a social justice bent, and you've brought up pesky little things such as the necessity for solid proof for certain claims, such as in the case of rape accusation, it is necessary to ascertain the truth and verify that such an undertaking has happened before the imprisonment of the accused. To do otherwise would be a violation of one of the cornerstones of Western justice, the notion of innocent until proven guilty, the idea that it is morally wrong to forcefully confine a person against their will for an act that they did not perform. Should you have found yourself in the position of defending this principle, and merely questioning if there is proof of the crime of rape, you've probably found yourself being accused of gaslighting. That is, the notion that merely questioning a victim is a form of malicious manipulation designed to cause them to doubt their own sanity via a process of re-victimization into recanting their story. Obviously, this is an absurd notion. The quest for information is not a manipulation in itself. It certainly can be. After all, if people know you are seeking a piece of information, people can be impacted by this to either help or hinder you. However, this is not caused by your quest for knowledge, but by people reacting to the knowledge that you seek knowledge. As such, this act of simply seeking out information is not and cannot be a form of psychological abuse or manipulation. It can be frustrating, of course, if you know something happened and someone doesn't merely take your word for it. However, this does not mean that they are necessarily questioning your sanity, merely asking for further impartial information that can verify your claim. Something that, if your claim is true, should not be a huge problem for you to provide. This, however, brings us somewhat neatly to the ironic gaslighting that I want to talk about today. The endless use of snarl words thrown at people who are in disagreement with progressive, left-leaning social justice ideology. If you found yourself in disagreement with these people, the odds are very good that you have been called one of the following: racist, sexist, misogynist, white supremacist, homophobic, transphobic, and many other words besides, which are of course merely this person having a tantrum because they can't convince you of the incorrectness of your position, and thus they resort to name-calling and shaming. However, most interestingly, for a group of people who love to accuse others of malicious mental manipulations, this is, ironically, exactly what they are doing when they deploy these words. Permit me to explain. You see, today, if you simply dislike, for example, a piece of media featuring a female or non-white person in any role of prominence, you will be called a sexist or racist respectively. This is a pattern of behaviour increasingly happening these days. What the person making this accusation is doing is claiming that despite your knowledge that you are neither of these things, that you in fact are these things, and that you just don't know it. In fact, these feelings may be completely subconscious to you, and thus you hold these values without knowing it or consciously acting upon them. But you totally are obviously still those things. I cannot think of something more malicious in its deployment than this. Sure, it may be used as a throwaway insult hurled at you by an overgrown child whining that they can't have their way and that the big meanie just needs to stop talking now because their precious feelings are being hurt, but it serves many purposes. Not only as a hurtful name, not only as an identifier for other people in their camp to dogpile and attack the accused, but also as a strategy to make the accused doubt their own sanity and worldview. You think you're not a sexist racist? Well, obviously you are, and you're just such a sexist racist that you can't even see it. But trust me, you totally are. And now that I've called you these things, and other people are also calling you these things, it must be true. And on top of that, you're privileged, and privilege is invisible to those who have it, so you need someone else, like me, to point it out to you so that you can change your behaviour according to my whims. This is the ironic gaslighting of the feminist social justice brigade. the projection that we know they are guilty of en masse. Baked into their very own ideology is the notion that certain people, owing to immutable characteristics, must behave in certain ways or believe certain things, and that only by becoming woke can they hope to mend their ways. The very notion of subconscious or unconscious bias is not only confirmed to be complete pseudoscience by its creators, but also rotten to the core by a process of causing those it accuses of being mentally unstable because they are engaging in behaviours without knowing it. If someone were to tell you that your mere presence in the world caused them physical pain, and that the closer you were caused more pain until your mere presence in a room with them caused them to adopt the fetal position, wailing and crying in seeming agony, after a while you might begin to align your behaviour to theirs and thus keep your distance. You have been gaslit. You may not fully believe it, but it sure seems that something is happening, and even though you doubt it, it's still easier to just go along with the wailing moron rather than put up with their nonsense. Of course, the situation is not so simple as that. It is far larger and more complexly multi-layered, but that is the core of the problem. People being repeatedly accused of certain beliefs and behaviours, eventually doubting their own sanity after being accused one too many times, and thus beginning their journey and/or research into the social justice cult, just so the accusations will stop and they can avoid the discomfort of being attacked with labels, which are almost universally despised within society. This is of course not to say that all times something is pointed out to someone that it is actually a false accusation made to gaslight them. Indeed, everyone is capable of poor behaviour, and it is sometimes required to have an external source point this out in order for you to correct it. However, in many of the cases where it is legitimate, such as incorrect movements during a sport or art, such as improper positioning during dance, incorrect stance during a game, in these instances the problem can be objectively pointed to in a way that can be qualified. For example, an archer moving their hand away from their face when they release the bowstring, consistently causing their arrow to fly wide of their target. This person can be told to keep the hand close to the face and follow the desired path of the arrow through and behind their own head with their hand. The problem is tangible and measurable, the results viewable, and once again objectively measurable in the form of improved shooting accuracy. However, when making the accusation of a nebulous behaviour that may or may not be there, and that perhaps vaguely causes you to sometimes do something or not do something, this holds no such measurability in either diagnosis or results. Instead, it leads to an endless cycle of self-doubt, apologia, and prostration to the presumed superior knowledge of others, pointing out flaws that you can never hope to see in yourself. Truly, it is a pernicious weapon, and one too often deployed to great effect via a process of social reinforcement and leverage. Colour me surprised that once again we find those making the accusation guilty of projection and confirm them for what they are: supremacists with guilty consciences, making use of self-serving moral outrage to distract from their own weakness and pathetic nature.